continue to get you the reaction and bring in Mmusi Maimane. He's been one of the voices championing, indeed, for the country to go to the polls by October. Mr. Maimane, always great to have you on the program. And you are actually, I think, the only politician who's already gone online and issued a public statement. You believe that this decision finally paves the way for people to vote the ANC out.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, fellow South Africans. When we went to the Mmusi Commission, we made the point to say that COVID would be a reality with us for the foreseeable future, that our constitution must reign supreme, and that councils are falling apart, that we mustn't forget what an election does. An election says you give a mandate to someone, or you can withdraw that mandate and give it to someone else if you feel that you've got no water, no electricity, no basic services. And in truth, this gives vindication to that decision. And also when we went to court to challenge the IEC, we wanted to ensure that we give power back to the people. So I'm celebrating because for once, we can be able to say the Constitution is standing, we can defend it, but we can also go back to a space where we can say, let citizens go express their sense. You can go express how they want this country to be run. So it's a significant day indeed for the people of South Africa.
What do you say then to the people of South Africa who say, well, they're not willing to go stand in queues to vote on election day because the vaccination numbers at this stage are still relatively low compared to that goal for the end of the year of 70% of the adult population? People who simply say they don't feel comfortable taking the risk given the pandemic conditions.
Well, to be fair, I understand that COVID has ripped through many families and many lives have been lost. So no one, not myself, I don't think even the IEC itself wants us to lose lives as a result of elections. But at the same time is that we wake up every morning and send just over 11 million citizens to school every single day. We tell those kids that we will protect them at school. We tell those teachers we'll do likewise every single day. Now, an election is over one day. And in fact, we can ask citizens to observe the same protocols and turn up. Now, along with that, we can make additional safety measures. We can say to them, elections can be over 3 days. There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We can also provide more venues for people. We can ultimately equally so provide additional sanitation, all other health protocols that we can put on place. We cannot exempt the IEC from upholding a very constitutional imperative that they knew about 5 years ago, effectively, that this day would come, and that they knew about at the start of last year when we went into all the lockdowns that we've had. So frankly, I would say that more importantly, this is for us. Otherwise, we must go and stand, and we're not taking risks. We take all precautions that we can take, but ultimately the democratic right to be able to say, I want water, I want electricity, I want a job is important, because if you leave people at home without water, without electricity, you are simply saying to them, not only do they face up to the virus, but you expose them to the biggest comorbidity, which is poverty and hunger, where many citizens find themselves across the country.
Well, those who had argued for the postponement of the elections had said that, look, it wouldn't be an indefinite postponement. They're saying, look, if you look at the 70% goal to vaccinate the adult population by the end of the year, if we do this by early 2022, even the sentiment of voters who, as you say, are disenfranchised, poor, dealing with a lack of service delivery would not have changed their minds. So would a few months really have done any damage?
That's not the question that is on the table. It's the question that's on the table when those were seeking to bring out a postponement was to say, are they going to do so, and whether we'll get higher vaccinations or whether we'll get any of those. The truth of the matter is that we have high vaccine hesitation. We also, along with that, do not know that the variants that are coming up in the next number of months. The Justice Mmusi had already himself made the case to say, would we be on our fourth wave? Or who knows, that in 6 months' time we could be on our fifth wave. Viruses follow human behavior, and we do not know at this stage what the projected future is going to look like. And whilst I respect our scientific communities, they themselves are subject to constitutionality. So it would be the same argument you would put forward to the people of Malawi who have just recently held an election to say, no, you must put up with this government because we are under COVID, or the people of Zambia, or the people of the United States when they were facing President Trump. You can't do that. All you can do is to say, we have a constitution that must reign supreme, and people must be entitled to go express a vote. But furthermore, I want to say we've set up organizations across the country who are closer to the people, who don't need to rely on national rallies of stadiums, who can simply say, in our local municipality, we have an association that has independent candidates who have been known by that community, and they can go vote to bring about the change. That is the power of democracy, when you give power back to the people.
Now, Mr. Maimane, the principle of free and fair elections, we know that it's very important for the integrity of an election. And we know that going to the Constitutional Court, the IEC kind of agreed with the recommendation by former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke that they do not believe that they would be able to deliver a free and fair election on the 27th of October. Now, given the fact that the Constitutional Court is now saying that that election should go ahead, how do you then balance that against the need for a free and fair elections? Or put differently, how can the IEC ensure that this election passes that test of being free and fair?
Well, firstly, and I think it's a very important point that you raised, because when it's said and done, the threshold for free and fair has to be meted against, which is the point we made in Concourt, to say that there are many elections. This is not just one election. There are wards, over 4,000 wards, if I'm not mistaken, so many municipalities across the country. So the threshold varies, because you can say in wards in the Eastern Cape, the elections were free and fair, and then you could maybe potentially say, well, in these wards, maybe that might not be the case. But having done the exercise, the standard must be measured across the country. Secondly, you must give the opportunity for the IEC right now. If South Africa is serious about its constitution, we must be putting every bit of resource behind the IEC so that that threshold of giving citizens the freedom to go express that vote is upheld. That's when you can uphold it. And then lastly, the only other condition that we sought to ensure that freedom, free and fairness, was about sticking to the rules. So all of these postponements, even without COVID, one could ask the question, how come the deadline was now postponed to suit? Who was it suiting that they could? When you fail to stick to your own rules, that is when the elections are not free and fair. And then secondly, having stuck to the rules, how do we ensure that we give facilities so that actually the elections can take place over 3 days and give the opportunity for more citizens to give expression to those?
Would you agree then, Mmusi, that voter turnout, when we do ultimately have this election between the 27th of October and the 1st of November, will be the ultimate gauge of whether it was all worth it?
Yeah, I think that's an important point. And again, I think it's incumbent upon all of us. If we are Democrats, we need to call upon all citizens to say, this is a good opportunity for everybody to exercise their right. Let's ask all people to go register to vote, especially young people. Young people are the most under-registered demographic in our country. They must go out. And ultimately, it is up to them who are adversely hit, looking at the recent unemployment levels, looking at what happens in our crime statistics. They're the ones who are most impacted. And so my call still remains that for purposes of democracy, it's our job with the media, with political parties, with all the infrastructure that we've set up in place to actually invite citizens to say, you can do so safely. In the same way as the Department of Education does for our kids, in the same way as a sector of the economy like the mining sector or the tourism sector, whichever sector, does so to invite people to come to work and be productive. This is our opportunity now democratically, those who are democratic-loving people, to invite people to say, let's participate in this democracy. Voter turnout must be encouraged because it's going to be a challenge now, but it is also going to be a challenge in future elections, and therefore we must re-entrench that culture in our citizens to say it is important for everybody to go cast their vote.
Mmusi Maimane, thank you so much for speaking to us. For those of you just joining us, we're covering the breaking news on the side of your screen. The Constitutional Court order that the local government elections must indeed go ahead between the 27th of October and the 1st of November. I'm Tembekile Mkhototo, still here with Newzroom Africa's politics editor, Sbu Ngalwa, as we continue to make sense and gauge the reactions from various sectors, Sbu. And Mmusi touched on the issue of campaigning, as did Siviwe Gwahube from the DA. These are unusual circumstances, and many of the parties will have to get creative in order to get people out.
And the reality is here, Temekile, is that we know that the political parties in South Africa know one traditional method of campaigning, which is walking through communities, kissing babies,
handing out T-shirts.
Exactly, and food parcels. And COVID-19 has pretty much forced everyone to kind of adapt to the new conditions. And I guess that argument cannot be a holding argument to say that because we are used to this way of working, therefore we cannot be able to do things any other way. So the reality now that the parties know that they have between now and, let's say, any time between the 27th of October and the 1st of November to get things going. So we'll see how creative they are. And I guess, in fact, the IEC had always argued before they commissioned the Moseneke report. They had always argued that the elections that had taken place in no less than 144 jurisdictions. So if there are any lessons to be learned, I guess our political parties will have to look through those various countries and see how they've done so, including some of the political parties here, actually.
Indeed, and we'll be waiting to see what the IEC says now that the court has told it that it has to go ahead with the local government elections, and what this means, perhaps, for a possible reopening of